When the door closes and silence fills the room, your brain quietly asks one question: am I truly alone, or am I still deeply connected to life itself? The answer to that question shapes your biology, your emotions, and the way you experience every single day. Living alone does not mean living without connection, because the human brain was never designed to measure companionship by physical proximity alone. It measures it by stimulation, meaning, and emotional engagement. And this is why a person can feel deeply lonely in a crowded room, yet profoundly fulfilled in quiet solitude. When the mind is actively alive, because neurons communicate through patterns of activity that respond not to the number of people around you, but to the richness of what you are thinking, learning, and feeling. And when your thoughts are curious, creative, and purposeful, the brain releases dopamine and other neurotransmitters that signal to the nervous system that life is engaging and worth participating in, which creates the internal sensation of being connected to something larger than the self, even in silence. And this is why reading a book, learning a new skill, listening to meaningful ideas, or exploring a creative passion can fill the same emotional space that conversation often occupies, because the brain does not differentiate between social stimulation and intellectual or emotional stimulation when it comes to generating a sense of aliveness. And as these neural networks activate, they form pathways that strengthen your emotional resilience, making solitude feel like a fertile landscape instead of an empty one. And over time, this trains the mind to associate being alone with growth rather than lack, shifting the chemistry of stress into the chemistry of curiosity. So cortisol decreases and a calm alertness emerges, allowing the body to feel safe in its own company. And in this state, the brain begins to produce serotonin and other mood-stabilizing compounds that support emotional balance, which means that solitude becomes not something to escape, but something that nourishes you, because your inner world becomes richly populated with ideas, memories, insights, and imagination. And these internal companions stimulate the same reward circuits that external relationships do, which explains why people who cultivate deep interests and reflective practices often report feeling less lonely, even when physically isolated. And this is not a psychological trick, but a biological process rooted in how the brain encodes meaning. Because when you give your mind something valuable to engage with, it experiences belonging at the level of neural firing patterns. And this belonging quiets the primitive fear of being alone, allowing you to inhabit your own presence with ease and confidence, transforming solitude into a space where your identity can breathe, grow, and become more deeply connected to itself, and to the vast living network of thoughts and experiences that flow through the human mind. The breath is one of the few bridges between the conscious mind and the automatic body, and when you slow it down and allow it to move gently through the chest and belly, you are speaking directly to the vagus nerve, the long wandering nerve that tells your heart, your lungs, and your digestive system whether the world is safe or threatening. And when this nerve receives calm, rhythmic signals from slow breathing, it shifts your entire physiology away from survival and toward connection, lowering heart rate, softening muscle tension, and inviting a feeling of internal companionship that replaces the anxious edge of loneliness with a quiet sense of being held. Because the brain interprets this calm bodily state as evidence that you are not abandoned, even when no one else is physically nearby. And this is why moments of stillness and mindful breathing can feel strangely comforting, as if an invisible presence has entered the room, when in reality it is your own nervous system beginning to trust itself. And this trust allows the emotional brain to release oxytocin and other bonding chemicals that normally flow during warm social contact, meaning that through breath and awareness, you can create the biological feeling of being connected without needing another person to be there. And as this practice becomes familiar, the body learns that solitude is not a threat, but a space of safety, where thoughts can slow down and sensations can be felt without urgency. And this slows the stress circuits in the brain that amplify feelings of isolation, making room for a deeper form of companionship that comes from being present with your own inner experience. And in this state, even silence becomes rich, filled with subtle rhythms of breath, heartbeat, and awareness that remind you that life is constantly moving through you, keeping you company in every moment. And as the nervous system settles into this gentle coherence, the immune system, digestion, and even cognitive clarity begin to improve, because the body is no longer wasting energy on imagined danger. And this physiological harmony creates an emotional landscape where peace replaces the ache of disconnection, allowing you to feel supported by your own biology, as if your breath itself were a quiet friend, always arriving when you need it, guiding you back into a sense of belonging that does not depend on external circumstances, but lives within the steady flow of air and awareness inside you. Movement is one of the most powerful ways the body reassures the brain that it is part of a living world, because every time your muscles contract and release, they send signals through the nervous system that say you are engaged, you are active, you are participating in life. And this simple biological message changes the way the brain interprets solitude, turning it from a state of waiting into a state of involvement. And as you walk, stretch, or even gently sway, blood flow increases and oxygen reaches the brain, stimulating the release of endorphins and brain-derived growth factors that protect neurons from the dulling effects of isolation, which is why even a short walk can suddenly lift your mood and make the world feel more open, because movement reminds the body that it belongs to gravity, to space, to rhythm, to something much larger than the walls around it. And when this sense of belonging is restored at a physical level, emotional loneliness begins to soften, as if the body itself was saying, you are not separate, you are in motion with everything else. And over time, this regular physical engagement strengthens the brain's resilience to stress, reducing inflammation and stabilizing mood, allowing you to feel more connected to yourself and your environment, even when no one else is nearby. And this is why people who move regularly often report a deeper sense of inner companionship, because their bodies are constantly generating signals of vitality and presence, filling the nervous system with quiet reassurance that life is flowing through them. And in that flow, the mind finds something to lean into, something to feel part of, which transforms empty hours into moments of embodied awareness, where every step, every stretch, and every breath becomes a reminder that you are not alone. You are a moving expression of life itself within a vast and living world. The way you speak to yourself is not just a stream of private thoughts. It is a form of internal communication that your brain processes in almost the same way. It processes the voice of another human being, which means that every gentle or harsh word you direct inward becomes a social experience at the level of your nervous system. And when that inner voice is critical or dismissive, the brain activates threat circuits that heighten feelings of isolation and emotional pain. But when the voice is patient, curious, and kind, the same neural pathways associated with trust, safety, and belonging begin to light up, allowing you to feel accompanied even in solitude. And this is why self-talk has such a powerful influence on loneliness, because it determines whether your inner world feels like a hostile environment or a supportive presence. And as you begin to offer yourself understanding instead of judgment, the brain releases soothing chemicals that calm the amygdala and stabilize mood, creating a sense of emotional warmth that mirrors what we feel when someone truly listens to us. And over time, this practice rewires the mind to associate being alone with being supported, shifting solitude from a place of emptiness into a place of gentle companionship, where your own awareness becomes a friend rather than a critic. And in this state, you can sit quietly without feeling abandoned, because the internal dialogue becomes a steady source of encouragement and reflection, guiding you through thoughts and feelings with compassion. And this compassionate inner relationship strengthens emotional resilience, making it easier to connect with others when opportunities arise, because you no longer approach the world from a place of need, but from a place of self-acceptance, where your own presence feels enough to sustain you in the quiet spaces between human interactions. Connection does not require constant togetherness. It only requires moments of genuine resonance. And when you reach out to another person through a message, a shared laugh, a thoughtful word, or a small act of kindness, your brain releases oxytocin, the hormone that signals trust and bonding, which means that even brief interactions can leave a long-lasting imprint on your emotional biology, allowing you to carry the feeling of being connected long after the moment has passed. And this is why a simple exchange with a stranger can soften loneliness more effectively than hours of passive distraction, because the nervous system recognizes authentic human contact as nourishment. And once it has tasted that nourishment, it holds on to it like a quiet echo, supporting you through periods of solitude. And as these small moments accumulate, they build a network of emotional memory that reminds the brain it belongs to a wider social world, even when no one is physically present. And this sense of belonging stabilizes mood, reduces stress hormones, and strengthens the immune system, because the body feels supported by invisible threads of human connection that stretch far beyond the walls of your home. And over time, this habit of intentional reaching out trains the brain to expect connection rather than absence, transforming solitude into a space where you can reflect, grow, and recharge instead of withdraw. And in this way, loneliness is not defeated by constant company, but by the gentle rhythm of meaningful contact that pulses through your days, creating a steady background of emotional warmth that stays with you in the quiet moments, reminding you that even when you are alone, you are still part of a living web of human experience that continues to touch you through memory, intention, and the simple act of caring.